Hey Booktube, it's David from Live Forever Die Trying, and I have a tag for you on this Tag Tuesday. I have two real motives behind this, and if you're not already familiar, tags are where people in the Booktube community pose a set of questions, either for just entertainment or to get to know one another better. And there's other two motivations behind this. Is one, Tag Tuesday is kind of a big thing in the Booktube community, and it's something that I've always wanted to get myself into the habit of doing, but I typically work late on Tuesdays, so it hasn't always, worked out. I haven't always had the motivation for it. But the real reason behind starting with this one on this Tuesday is because one of my favorite Instagram accounts, Ideas in Hat, actually just posted his very first YouTube video just a few days ago, and I've been looking for an excuse to tag him or shout him out. So he does a lot of scholarly nonfiction, a little bit of academia, but also some easier to understand stuff. Or rather, he takes these bigger ideas and makes them easier to understand, which is what I personally love about following his content over on Instagram. So go check out the description below. In the comments, I'll tag him. Check out his channel and drop him some love. Alright, and before we start, this tag was actually created by Mark Nash, and I first saw it on both Jeremy Fee's channel and Steve Donahue. So this particular one is called the Last 10 Books tag, which is a variety of questions about what's the last book that was this for you, or the last book that you did this with, or what have you. You'll catch on quick. Anyways, the first question is, what's the last book you didn't finish? And this one was real easy for me. It was Kant's Critique of Pure Reason. You saw me pick this up in a philosophy book haul, and to be honest, it is completely out of my league, as well as being a chunk of a book. So I just don't possess the understanding of philosophy to know what he's talking about yet. I'm in the habit of reading around him and hearing people reference him, and I'm getting a better understanding in that regard, but I'm still not quite there with this guy yet. If y'all have any podcast or anything to help me into this, leave those below as well. Second up, what's the last book you reread? And I haven't really reread any books front to back, but one I do reference often is Boundless by Ben Greenfield. So this is like an encyclopedia of self-help or biological self-help. So if you want to sleep, what should you do? It's okay, here's 20 tips on sleep hygiene. Here's the references and the sources, and go blah, blah, blah. Search all this up. And you can do the same thing with fitness or diet or even smart drugs and using devices like Oura rings to track heart rate variability and why stuff like that's important. So this is borderline biohacky, and this is something I keep coming back to and rereading the same chapters, and thus why I'm giving myself the credit for this question here. Third up is, what's the last book you bought? And I actually don't know that one because I've had two that have come in the mail just today. So I figured I'd open them up with you and we'd figure out what's the last ones we bought. So first up, we have Bullshit Jobs, A Theory by David Graeber. Graeber? But this is actually for a book club we have coming up next month, and if I remember correctly, it's all about the concept of jobs that don't really have a purpose. So maybe an example of this is security at some place that's already well guarded, or you just don't need to have that job, but that job is created for some bullshit reason, maybe to save on insurance in the aspect of that security guard. Maybe the insurance for that building is less than the cost of a salaried security guard, so even though they don't need one, they have one. There'll probably be better examples in this book, but I look forward to reviewing it more in depth next month. And then second up, we have, I was actually really looking forward to this. It's Viral BS, Medical Myths and Why We Fall for Them by Dr. Seema Yasmin. And this is actually from Johns Hopkins University Press. So I received a copy of this in exchange for an honest review. And it looks like it's just basically how to tell what's real science and what's not real science. So just on the cover here, it says, should you take a cholesterol-lowering drug? Does playing football give players brain damage? Is drinking diet soda linked to Alzheimer's or strokes? Are e-cigarettes helpful or harmful? Does birth control pills cause depression? And is there lid in your lipstick? So I'm actually really looking forward to this. It's fairly short, coming in at just a hair over 200 pages. And yeah, expect a review soon. Number 4 is, what is the last book you said you've read but didn't? And I really didn't want to answer this one because I think it's a little embarrassing, but I've read around the book enough that I'm pretty sure I understand it fully, but it's Darwin's Origin of Species. And I've read so many genetic books and so many books about like lifespan and telomeres and different stuff like that. I feel like I grasp it. I don't know, guys. Should I actually dive? Like, would I get value out of it if I actually read the full thing, like front to back? Let me know. Number 5, what is the last book you wrote in the margins of? And speaking of ideas and hats, he actually hates this whole thing. He's got a video about stuff you shouldn't do with books, but I do that in about half or a quarter of the books I read. But the last one I did that in was Eating Animals by Jonathan Safran Foer, and this is all about like the ethics behind eating animals and how animals are treated, and you saw a lot of coverage of this in my last video, so I'll link that up here. But yeah, we actually did this for a book club, so I like making the notes here, similar to what Jeremy Fee said, because I want to know what I was thinking in order to bring it up in those conversations. If you're not about like defacing your own property, you can always use sticky notes or like tabs or what have you, but sometimes just writing in it as you go, especially if you're not going to give away the book, it's just convenient. Question 6, the last book you've had signed. And I actually haven't had a book signed at all yet, mainly because I was only reading 1 year prior to the pandemic, and now here we are. But if I had to get one signed, it'd actually be one that's also the answer to the next question. So number 7 is the last book you've lost. And for me, that was How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan. So this, Michael Pollan, if you don't already know, is like a food writer. So he has like The Omnivore's Dilemma, The Fate of Our Food, and different books like that. Excuse me. But he broke pace with that and made a book all about drugs, specifically like psychedelics. And this is a book I read and then gave away to a close friend. So I'm considering that lost just because I haven't seen it back yet and we're in a pandemic. But that's neither here nor there. I would love to have a copy of that signed just because I look up to the information in that book, and it's a book that I reference and handle often. In addition, Michael Pollan is one of my favorite authors just in nonfiction in general, so I'd love to have a complete collection of his work, as well as the newest book he has coming out, which is This Is Your Brain on Plants, which is similar of like psychoactive plants. So it's keeping to that more psychedelic, like druggy type of like context. So I would love to have that book and have that book signed. Then number 9, the last book I had an argument over, and that has to be Lifespan by Sinclair. But really it's any longevity-based book. Obviously on a channel that I talk about longevity and life extension often, there's a lot of ethical questions that come in that, as well as, first of all, is the science even possible? So I've had a lot of arguments about that, which shortly I will argue that it is possible, it's just a matter of time, as long as there's not a spiritual aspect that can't be sustained over the course of a human's life. Like, you should be able to upkeep all of the parts. We might not have the technology yet, but theoretically I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be possible. And then finally, question 10, what's the last book you could not get a hold of? And that would have to be Superintelligence by Nick Bostrom. And it's kind of a cheap answer because I can get a hold of it, I just don't want to pay retail. And every time I look at like thrift books or Abe books or any of these other like used resellers, it's always like near retail or out of stock. So really, it's not that I couldn't get it, it's just I don't want to yet. But this is another one I want to read because I have other books coming in, like The Myth of Artificial Intelligence and stuff arguing against the singularity. And I would like to build out a well-rounded view of that subject. And then of course, with tags, you have to tag other people. So again, tagging ideas and hats. And anybody else who hasn't done it, go ahead, consider yourself tagged. I know this one's been around for a few weeks, so I'm not sure who has and hasn't done it yet. Anyways, until next time, guys.